Charlotte Whitmore had spent her entire adult life rising. At 42, she was the CEO of Whitmore Dynamics, a Chicago-based technology conglomerate that specialized in infrastructure software, smart buildings, automated systems, digital security. Her name appeared regularly in business magazines beside words like visionary, relentless, untouchable. Before we continue, take a quick second to support the channel. If you enjoy powerful billionaire stories like this, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community. It helps the channel grow and lets us keep bringing you stories that matter. Thank you. Now, let's continue. That morning, she stood alone in the private elevator of the Sterling Tower, a 47-story glass skyscraper overlooking the Chicago River. The building had been designed by one of her subsidiaries. The elevator itself ran on proprietary software developed under her direct approval. It was, in many ways, a monument to her. Charlotte checked her watch. 8:14 a.m. She was already late. Her phone buzzed with calendar alerts, emails, and messages from executives waiting upstairs. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled for exactly 8:30, and punctuality was a rule she enforced with surgical precision. People who wasted time did not last long in her world. The elevator doors slid closed with a soft mechanical sigh. She barely noticed the man who stepped in at the last second. He wore a navy blue work jacket, slightly faded at the seams, with a stitched name patch that read E. Carter. A maintenance badge hung from his chest. His boots were clean but worn, the kind that had seen years of quiet labor. Charlotte gave him a brief glance, long enough to categorize him, and then looked away. The elevator began its ascent. Floor numbers blinked upward in calm white light. 7, 8, 9. The man stood a few feet away, hands loosely clasped, posture relaxed. He didn't stare at his phone. Didn't hum. Didn't fidget. He simply waited. Charlotte shifted her weight slightly, irritation creeping in. She disliked sharing space this small with people who didn't belong to her schedule. The private elevator was supposed to be exclusive, but building management had insisted on allowing essential maintenance access. "Morning," the man said casually, his voice calm, unforced. Charlotte nodded once without turning her head. Silence returned. The elevator passed the 20th floor. That was when it happened. There was no dramatic crash. No sparks. No alarms. Just a soft, almost polite jerk, and then stillness. The numbers froze. The elevator lights flickered once, then stabilized. Charlotte frowned. She pressed the button for 47 again. Nothing. She pressed it harder this time, as if pressure alone might command obedience. Still nothing. The elevator did not move. She exhaled sharply. Unbelievable. The man glanced at the panel, then at the ceiling, listening. Charlotte stabbed the emergency call button. A faint tone sounded, then cut off. No response. Her phone vibrated again, 3 missed calls already, but when she lifted it, the signal bars faded to nothing. Dead. The elevator was silent except for the soft hum of power running somewhere behind the walls. Charlotte's jaw tightened. "This building is less than 5 years old," she said, more to the space than to him. "This should not be happening." The man nodded. New systems fail faster than old ones sometimes. She finally turned toward him, annoyance flashing in her eyes. "That's not how technology works." He smiled faintly, not offended. "Depends on who designs it." That struck her. She studied him now, really looked. He was in his early 40s, maybe older. White. Clean-shaven, with short brown hair just beginning to gray at the temples. His eyes were sharp but unassuming, the kind that noticed things without announcing it. "What's your role here?" she asked. "Elevator systems maintenance," he said. "Contracted." Charlotte scoffed lightly. "Then I assume you can fix this." "Probably," he replied. That word irritated her more than anything else so far. "Probably," she repeated. "We're stuck 21 floors above ground. I have a board meeting in 16 minutes. I don't deal in probabilities." He tilted his head, considering. "Then you're going to have a rough day." She stared at him, disbelief bordering on anger. No one spoke to her like that. Not assistants. Not executives. Certainly not maintenance workers. "Listen," she said coolly. "This building runs on Whitmore Dynamic software. I approved the architecture myself. If there's a malfunction, it's on your end." He raised an eyebrow. "You're Charlotte Whitmore." It wasn't a question. "Yes," she said. "And I suggest you take this seriously." He nodded once, unbothered. "I am." He stepped closer to the control panel and crouched, pulling a small diagnostic tool from his jacket pocket. He didn't rush, didn't fumble. His movements were precise, economical. Charlotte crossed her arms, impatience vibrating beneath her composed exterior. "Do you have any idea how much time this is costing me?" she asked. "About 8 minutes so far," he said, plugging in the device. "Give or take." Her lips pressed into a thin line. As he worked, the elevator seemed smaller, the air heavier. Charlotte became acutely aware of the lack of movement, the absence of upward progress. For the first time in years, she wasn't advancing toward anything. She hated the feeling. Minutes passed. The man studied the readout, then frowned, not with confusion, but with mild curiosity. "Well," he said. "Well, what?" Charlotte snapped. "This isn't a mechanical failure," he replied. "It's a logic lock." She stiffened. "That's impossible." "No," he said calmly. "It's intentional." He looked up at her now, meeting her eyes fully. Someone installed an override that freezes the system when two conflicting authority protocols activate at once. Charlotte's pulse quickened. That safeguard was removed in the last update. He shook his head slowly. No. It was buried. Disabled visually, but not deleted. Her mind raced. "That code was deprecated," she said. "I signed off on it being eliminated." He unplugged the tool and stood. "You signed off on the summary," he corrected. "Not the raw architecture." The elevator remained motionless. For the first time since the doors had closed, Charlotte Whitmore felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Uncertainty. And the man in the maintenance jacket, Ethan Carter, was suddenly no longer invisible. Charlotte Whitmore didn't panic. Not outwardly. She had built her career on calm dominance, on the ability to stare down chaos and make it blink first. Even now, trapped between floors in a silent steel box, she kept her breathing measured and her posture controlled. But inside her chest, irritation was transforming into something sharper. Ethan Carter stood near the panel as if elevators stopped every day and it was merely an inconvenience, like rain. He wasn't sweating. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't performing nervous politeness the way most people did around her. That alone felt like an offense. "You're telling me someone intentionally designed this system to lock?" Charlotte asked, voice low and precise. Ethan glanced at the ceiling corners, tiny black domes, security cameras. He didn't point, but his eyes acknowledged them. "I'm saying the system is doing exactly what it was told to do," he replied. "Which means somebody told it to do this." Charlotte's jaw flexed. Nobody would sabotage Sterling Tower. It's one of the most valuable commercial properties in the city. Ethan gave a slight shrug. "People don't sabotage buildings. They sabotage people." The words landed like a quiet punch. Charlotte stared at him. "And who exactly is people?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he pressed 2 buttons in a sequence, 21, then 19, then the emergency stop release. He listened. Nothing. He crouched again, resting one forearm against his knee, like he had all day. Charlotte's phone vibrated in her hand, ghost notifications, trapped without signal. She glanced at the blank bars again, as if willing a connection into existence. "Try turning airplane mode on and off," she muttered, half to herself. Ethan looked up. "That won't help." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "And you know that how?" He tapped the wall beside the panel with 2 knuckles. "These shafts are built like Faraday cages. Steel, concrete, insulation, plus the building shielding. It's meant to protect sensitive systems from interference. It also kills reception." Charlotte's irritation spiked again, but now it had an edge of discomfort. She didn't like being reminded there were details she hadn't personally mastered. She gestured sharply at the diagnostic tool in his hand. "So fix it." Ethan's gaze was steady. I can. Then why are we still standing here? Because you're assuming the elevator is the problem, he said. Charlotte's mouth opened, then shut. She hated that he was calm, hated that he wasn't intimidated, hated most of all that he sounded certain. Ethan rose and reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a folded paper, old school, wrinkled at the corners. He unfolded it with deliberate care. Charlotte squinted. Is that a printed schematic? Ethan nodded. You'd be surprised how often paper saves the day. Charlotte stared at the schematic like it had offended her personally. Whitmore Dynamics didn't print anything anymore. Their offices were glass and tablets and cloud-based dashboards. Paper was for people who couldn't keep up. And yet Ethan was holding the building's elevator logic map like it was a compass. He traced a section with his finger. See this line? Authority Protocol Chain. It's supposed to prioritize the building management system. But there's a hidden branch. Charlotte leaned forward unwillingly, eyes scanning. That's not hidden. That's labeled as deprecated. Ethan nodded. Exactly. Labeled. Not removed. Charlotte straightened. That should not be present. It is, he said simply. Charlotte's mind flashed back to meetings, developers presenting polished slides, technical leads summarizing changes, her approving updates at high speed. She signed off on things the way a general approved troop movements, trusting that the people beneath her executed correctly. She didn't check every line. She didn't have to. Until now. A faint vibration pulsed through the elevator floor, tiny, like the building shifting in its sleep. Somewhere far above, she could imagine people laughing, coffee being poured, meetings beginning. Life continuing. While she stood trapped like a powerless stranger. Charlotte swallowed. How long will this take? Ethan folded the schematic slowly. Depends on you. She stared. Depends on me? He nodded. This lock triggers when two authority requests conflict. One is the building system. The other is executive override. Charlotte's eyes narrowed, suspicion sharpening. My override. Your override, Ethan confirmed. She felt her throat tighten. That's impossible. My executive credentials wouldn't conflict with building management. They're designed to supersede. Ethan's expression didn't change. Unless someone copied your credentials. Charlotte's stomach dropped, just slightly, just enough that she noticed. That's absurd, she said quickly, but her voice wasn't as sharp as before. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Is it? Charlotte thought of the countless assistants, tech staff, security teams who had access to systems. The countless contractors in and out. The endless hands that touched her world without her truly seeing them. She hated where her mind was going. Ethan stepped closer to the panel. If someone cloned your executive access, the system sees two top-level authorities issuing conflicting signals. Instead of choosing, it freezes for safety. Charlotte's hands curled into fists. So you're saying someone used my identity? I'm saying that's what the logic suggests, Ethan replied. Charlotte's chest tightened, anger rising, not at him, but at the idea. The insult. The violation. Her voice lowered. Who would do that? Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, someone who knows how your world works. Charlotte's eyes flashed. And you know how my world works. Ethan's mouth twitched like he almost smiled but decided not to. Better than you think. Charlotte stepped closer, her heels clicking once on the metal floor. Who are you, Ethan Carter? He met her gaze. A guy who fixes elevators. No, she said, voice like ice. You're not just maintenance. Ethan didn't deny it. He only asked, do you want out? Charlotte hesitated. Pride fought instinct. Curiosity fought control. Yes, she said finally. I want out. Ethan nodded once. Then we do this the simple way. He pressed a sequence again, different this time. He used the manual access key hidden behind a panel latch and twisted it with quiet certainty. The elevator lights dimmed for half a second. Charlotte's pulse spiked. Ethan held up one finger, signaling silence, and listened. He wasn't listening to the elevator. He was listening to the building, tiny clicks, the hum of current shifting, the faint pulse of relays. Then he exhaled. "Okay," he said. Charlotte's voice was tight. "Okay, what?" He looked at her. "I need you to authorize a hard reset." Charlotte blinked. "I already tried." "Not on the public panel," Ethan said. "On your system." Charlotte stared at him. "I have no signal." Ethan nodded. "Exactly." Charlotte's annoyance flared again. "Then what are you suggesting?" Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, an old, compact device with a dull black casing and a tiny LED. A portable signal node. Charlotte stared like she'd seen a relic. "That's not standard." Ethan's eyes were steady. "No. It's mine." He clicked it on. A small green light blinked, once, twice, then steady. Charlotte's phone buzzed in her hand. 1 bar. Then 2. Then full signal. Charlotte froze. Ethan's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Now you can access your system." Charlotte looked at him like he had just performed magic. "You carry a private signal relay?" she demanded. Ethan shrugged. "I like being prepared." Charlotte's screen lit up with messages flooding in, board members asking where she was, her assistant panicking, security alerts. Her calendar was a battlefield of missed minutes. She looked up slowly. "Who are you really?" Ethan didn't answer directly. He nodded toward the panel. "Authorize the hard reset. And do it carefully. If you push the wrong command, you'll trigger the safety brake and we'll be here for hours." Charlotte's breath caught. For the first time, she felt the weight of choice, real choice, not boardroom theater. Her fingers hovered over her phone screen. And for the first time in years, Charlotte Whitmore was about to take instructions from a man she couldn't control. Charlotte Whitmore stared at the authorization screen on her phone. The interface was familiar, sleek, minimalist, unforgiving. She had approved thousands of commands like this over the years. Budget releases. System overrides. Emergency shutdowns. Each tap carried weight, but never doubt. This one did. Her thumb hovered just above the glass. Ethan Carter stood beside the panel, watching her reflection in the brushed steel wall rather than her face. He wasn't rushing her. He wasn't coaching her through it. He was giving her something she rarely experienced. Space. "You said carefully," Charlotte murmured. "What does that mean, exactly?" Ethan glanced at the screen. "You'll see 2 reset paths. One labeled Executive Priority Restoration. The other is buried, Legacy Conflict Nullifier." Charlotte's brow furrowed. "The second one shouldn't even be visible." "It shouldn't," Ethan agreed. "But it is." She scrolled slowly, heart thudding louder than she wanted to admit. There it was, grayed slightly, flagged as obsolete, with a warning note in small text. "Use may result in loss of executive override privileges." Charlotte inhaled sharply. "That's unacceptable." Ethan finally turned to face her. "That's honest." She shot him a look. "I don't need honesty right now. I need this elevator moving." Ethan nodded. "Then choose the first option." Her thumb twitched toward it. "And we'll be stuck again the next time your credentials clash with the clone," he added calmly. "Assuming we even get moving at all." Charlotte froze. She looked at him. "You're telling me this isn't a one-time event?" "No," Ethan said. "I'm telling you this is a symptom." Charlotte felt heat rise in her chest, anger, humiliation, something dangerously close to fear. "Someone copied my access," she said slowly. "Someone high enough to know how." Ethan didn't respond. "You know who did it," she pressed. Ethan exhaled through his nose. "I know how it was done." "That's not what I asked." He met her eyes now, fully. "You don't want names yet." Charlotte bristled. "Don't tell me what I want." Ethan held her gaze. "You don't want names until you're ready to accept what they mean." Silence pressed in on them. The elevator felt smaller than ever. Charlotte looked back at the screen. Her thumb hovered again, this time trembling just slightly. "If I use the legacy nullifier," she said, voice steady but quiet, "I lose override privileges." "Temporarily," Ethan corrected. until you rebuild the authority chain cleanly. And if I don't, you keep the illusion of control, he said, and the system keeps choosing safety over obedience. Charlotte let out a humorless laugh. I built my entire company on control. Ethan's expression softened, not with pity, but recognition. I know. That did it. She snapped her head toward him. How? Ethan hesitated. For the first time since they'd been trapped together, he looked like a man standing at the edge of a line. Then he said, because I helped design the first version of this system. Charlotte's breath caught. What? She whispered. Ethan looked back at the panel. 10 years ago. Before Whitmore Dynamics acquired the firm. Before the branding. Before the boardroom. Charlotte's mind raced. That's impossible. The original architects were absorbed, Ethan finished. Reassigned. Let go. Forgotten. Charlotte stared at him like she was seeing a ghost. You're telling me you worked on the foundation of my flagship product? Yes. And now you fix elevators? Ethan shrugged lightly. Among other things. Her voice sharpened. Why? Ethan considered the question carefully. Because when your company bought ours, they kept the code and discarded the people. Charlotte flinched. That's not personal, Ethan asked quietly. It was. Charlotte's throat tightened. She remembered the acquisition vaguely, a fast-moving deal, applauded by investors. She'd never met the engineers. Never asked what happened to them. She swallowed. Why didn't you stay? Ethan smiled, but there was no humor in it. I did. For a while. Then I realized the system rewarded visibility, not understanding. Charlotte felt the words land deep, uncomfortably close to truth. And the cloned credentials? She asked. Ethan looked at the ceiling again. Some people don't leave cleanly. Charlotte closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, her thumb moved. She selected Legacy Conflict Nullifier. A warning flashed again, brighter this time. Confirm loss of executive override. Charlotte hesitated only once. Then she pressed confirm. The screen went dark. The elevator lights flickered, harder this time. The hum behind the walls deepened, then dropped into silence so complete it made Charlotte's ears ring. Her heart pounded. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then, click. A low mechanical sound rolled beneath their feet. The panel lights reappeared, steady and calm. The floor indicator blinked. 21, 20, 19. The elevator began to descend. Charlotte let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Ethan crouched immediately, watching the panel, counting under his breath. 30 seconds, he murmured. 30 seconds for what? Charlotte asked. For the system to fully reconcile. The elevator continued smoothly now. Charlotte leaned back against the wall, legs suddenly weak. The adrenaline that had carried her through the decision was draining fast, leaving something raw behind. Why 60 seconds? She asked quietly. Ethan looked up. That's how long it takes for the old logic to fully release control. Anything less and it snaps back. Charlotte nodded slowly. The seconds ticked by. At 45 seconds, the elevator shuddered once, brief, sharp. Charlotte's breath hitched. Ethan raised a hand. Normal. At 58 seconds, the panel beeped softly. Then, at exactly 60, the floor indicator cleared. The elevator paused. Then reversed direction. Upward. Charlotte stared as the numbers climbed again. 22. 23. 24. Her chest tightened, not with panic this time, but something like awe. It worked, she whispered. Ethan stood and brushed invisible dust from his jacket. Of course it did. Charlotte turned to him slowly. You just dismantled a core executive safeguard in under a minute, she said. Something my senior engineers would need days to debate. Ethan met her gaze. They debate it. I removed it. Why? She demanded. Why help me? Ethan's answer came without hesitation. Because systems should serve people, not trap them. The elevator slowed. The doors slid open. Bright light flooded in. Voices. Movement. The world rushed back like a wave. Charlotte stepped forward, then stopped. She turned back to Ethan. He remained inside the elevator, one hand on the panel, already preparing to reset his signal node. "Wait," she said. Ethan looked up. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Now you decide what kind of authority you want when the doors open." Charlotte glanced out at the waiting board members, the executives frozen mid-conversation, her assistant pale with relief. Then she looked back at Ethan Carter, the man below the button, the architect in a maintenance jacket, the one person in the building who hadn't bowed. "I need to talk to you," she said. Ethan nodded once. "You know where to find me." And before she could say another word, he stepped back. The doors closed. Charlotte Whitmore stood alone on the 47th floor. And nothing felt the same. The boardroom fell silent the moment Charlotte Whitmore walked in. Not the polite silence of attention, but the kind that came from collective relief wrapped in confusion. 12 executives sat around the long walnut table, their tablets glowing with frozen slides. Her assistant, Megan, stood near the wall, phone still in hand, eyes wide. "Charlotte," Megan breathed. "We thought." "I know," Charlotte said calmly. "I'm here." She took her seat at the head of the table, setting her phone down face up for the first time that morning. The device felt different in her hand now. Less like a weapon. More like a tool. Around the table, people waited for her to explain. To apologize. To assert control. She did none of those things. "Before we begin," Charlotte said, voice steady, "I'm postponing today's agenda." A ripple of surprise moved through the room. One of the board members, Richard Hale, leaned forward. "Charlotte, the quarterly numbers." "Can wait," she interrupted, gently but firmly. Something more important just surfaced. She tapped her phone, projecting a system diagnostic onto the wall screen behind her. Lines of code scrolled, raw, unpolished, unfamiliar to most of the people in the room. "This," she continued, "is a legacy authority branch that should not exist." Several executives exchanged glances. "Our engineers assured us," someone began. Charlotte raised a hand. Silence returned instantly. "Assurances are no longer sufficient," she said. "Effective immediately, I'm commissioning a full audit of our core architecture. Not summaries. Not reports. The actual code." Richard frowned. "That could take months." "Then we'll take months," Charlotte replied. "If we built something we no longer understand, we built it wrong." The room absorbed that. Megan stared at her like she was seeing a different person. Charlotte exhaled slowly. "There's more. Until the audit is complete, I am suspending my executive override privileges." The room erupted. "That's insane," Richard said sharply. "Charlotte, that authority is what trapped me in an elevator this morning," Charlotte finished. The words cut through the noise. She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. Silence fell again, heavier this time. "We will operate with distributed authority," Charlotte said. "No single access point. No single failure point." A younger board member spoke cautiously. "That's unconventional." Charlotte met his eyes. So was trusting one person with absolute control. No one argued after that. The meeting ended early. When the room cleared, Charlotte stood alone by the window, looking out over the Chicago skyline. The river glinted below, indifferent and steady. The city moved the way it always had, millions of lives flowing without her permission. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown internal extension. "E. Carter. Maintenance Level B." She didn't hesitate. The maintenance bay was nothing like her office. Low ceilings. Exposed pipes. Concrete floors scuffed by years of quiet labor. The air smelled faintly of oil and dust. Men and women in work jackets moved between tool lockers, nodding to each other, speaking in practical shorthand. Ethan Carter stood near a workbench, removing his jacket. He looked up when she entered. "You found me," he said. "I had help," Charlotte replied. "My assistant has a gift for locating people." Ethan smiled faintly. "Of course she does." They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the buildings surrounding them. "I suspended my override," Charlotte said finally. Ethan nodded, unsurprised. "That was fast." "I don't move slowly once I see the truth," she replied. Ethan studied her. "And what truth is that?" Charlotte folded her arms, not defensively, but thoughtfully. "That I mistook access for understanding, control for competence." Ethan leaned back against the bench. "That's a hard realization." "It's overdue," she said. He waited. "I want you back," Charlotte said. Ethan blinked once. "Back where?" "Whitmore Dynamics," she said. "Not as maintenance. Not as a consultant. As an architect. With authority to rebuild what we broke." Ethan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. "And the people who were discarded?" he asked quietly. Charlotte didn't dodge it. "I want to find them. I want to fix that too." Ethan was silent for a long time. Then he shook his head slowly. "I didn't come down here because I couldn't climb back up." Charlotte nodded. "I know. I came down because up there, people stopped listening," he continued. "Down here, things either work or they don't." Charlotte stepped closer. "Then help me build something that works." Ethan met her gaze, searching. "And when the board pushes back?" "They already have," Charlotte said. "They lost." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "You don't make small offers," he said. "I don't make empty ones either," she replied. Ethan looked around the maintenance bay. The tools, the people, the quiet competence that kept the building alive without applause. "I need time," he said finally. Charlotte nodded. "Take it." She turned to leave, then paused. "Ethan." "Yes." "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. "You're welcome." 3 months later, Sterling Tower's elevator systems ran smoother than ever. Not because they were more complex, but because they were simpler. Whitmore Dynamics underwent a quiet transformation. Fewer press releases. More internal rewiring. Teams that had once been invisible were brought into the light. Decisions slowed down, but they made sense. Charlotte still sat at the top floor, but she no longer believed height meant clarity. Sometimes, when she rode the elevator alone, she watched the numbers change and thought about the day it stopped. About the man who had stood beside her without fear. About the 60 seconds that dismantled an illusion. And about the truth she carried with her now. Power doesn't come from standing above the system. It comes from understanding what's beneath it. And when the doors open, the world doesn't care who you were, only who you chose to become.